Morgan Nick was born on September 12, 1988, in the quaint town of Ozark, Arkansas. Shortly after her arrival, her parents welcomed a son, followed by another daughter a year later. Morgan shared a delightful bond with her younger siblings, often spending hours engaged in play, with her siblings looking up to her in admiration. As she began to learn to read, Morgan would practice with children's books, delighting in reading bedtime stories to her brother. From an early age, she exhibited a passion for animals and frequently expressed her aspiration to become a veterinarian in the future. During her elementary school years, Morgan became a member of the Girl Scouts, where she enjoyed crafting, participating in nature excursions, and bonding with her peers. When Morgan was 6 years old, her parents decided to divorce. However, the children continued to enjoy ample time with their father. In early summer of 1995, a family friend invited Morgan's mother to a Little League baseball game in the nearby town of Alma. Initially hesitant due to the distance of nearly 30 miles and the fact that it was a Friday evening, she ultimately chose to attend and took Morgan along, hoping it would be a pleasant way to spend time together. On the evening of June 9, Morgan's mother left the younger children with their grandmother and made her way to the stadium. Despite its small size, approximately 300 attendees, including parents and children, gathered for the game. After finding her friends and settling in to watch, Morgan soon grew bored. Eventually, she spotted two acquaintances who invited her to join them in catching fireflies near the stadium. Initially, Morgan's mother was reluctant to allow her to go out, as it was getting dark and they were unfamiliar with the town. She was concerned about potential dangers. However, her friends reassured her that their children frequently played near the stadium without incident. After some hesitation, she permitted Morgan to join the other kids, who ran off to a small hill still within her mother's line of sight. Morgan's mother periodically checked on her daughter. Approximately 15 minutes later, the baseball game concluded, and the players began to make their way to the bleachers to reunite with their parents. In a brief moment of distraction, Morgan's mother looked away, and when she turned back, she noticed that her daughter was missing. The two children Morgan had been playing with were heading toward the bleachers without her. Concerned, the woman approached them to inquire about her daughter. They explained that they had paused to shake sand out of their shoes after playing and had leaned against a car in the parking lot while doing so, with Morgan positioned behind the vehicle. Once they finished, they walked back to the stadium, unaware that Morgan had not followed them. Assuming she was waiting by the car for her mother, they did not think it unusual and continued on their way. Morgan's mother glanced toward the parking lot and recognized her car, but there was no sign of her daughter. She hurried over to check inside, but Morgan was not there. A sense of panic began to overwhelm her as she returned to the children, hoping they could provide further information. Following Morgan's disappearance, her mother inquired about her daughter's possible whereabouts, but the individuals she spoke to had no information. They did, however, mention having seen a man in the parking lot while they were playing. He was positioned near a red pickup truck, observing the stadium and occasionally glancing in their direction. At one point, he approached them and spoke, but they could not recall his exact words, only that he had a noticeable country accent. Suspecting that this man might be connected to her daughter's disappearance, Morgan's mother promptly contacted the police. 6 minutes later, officers arrived at the stadium and initially interviewed the children who'd been with Morgan prior to her vanishing. Through their discussions, the police gathered additional details about the man near the stadium. Piecing together the children's descriptions, investigators determined that he was a white male, aged between 23 and 30, approximately 6 feet tall, with an average build, a beard, a mustache, and dark hair. The children also provided a clear description of his vehicle, an old red pickup truck with Arkansas license plates and a white camper shell. This detail raised the officers' suspicions, as a camper shell could easily accommodate an adult and potentially a child. Furthermore, The camper appeared unusually short for the truck, making it seem out of place for that model. This led to increased concern that the man might be directly involved in Morgan's abduction and could have utilized the camper for that purpose. The children also noted that the man was dressed only in jeans and was not wearing a shirt. The search of the parking lot commenced immediately. However, no vehicle matching the description was located. After conversing with the children, the officers began to question all individuals still present at the stadium. Unfortunately, none of the 300 attendees who had been engrossed in the game could recall witnessing anything unusual or suspicious that evening. A thorough search around the stadium yielded no results, prompting the officers to extend their search to the adjacent streets. Despite their diligent efforts, no trace of Morgan was discovered that night. Her mother, overwhelmed with grief, refused to return home and chose to remain at the fire station for the remainder of the night. The following day, the search efforts escalated as news of Morgan's disappearance rapidly circulated throughout the community, leading to an influx of volunteers. Soon, the FBI and state police became involved, providing helicopters for aerial searches and creating a suspect sketch based on descriptions from Morgan's friends. This sketch, along with photographs of Morgan, was disseminated throughout the town and surrounding areas in hopes that someone might recognize the individual. Initially, authorities considered the possibility that Morgan had simply wandered off from the parking lot and become lost. However, as nearly 24 hours elapsed without any sign of her, it became increasingly evident that if that were the case, she would have been located by then. That evening, police began receiving concerning reports from parents, including one woman who recounted a disturbing incident in which a stranger attempted to lure her 4-year-old daughter into his red pickup truck just hours before the baseball game, near a laundromat. Alma was present outside the building with her daughter when the mother exited and the man drove away. She provided a description of the suspect that corresponded with the sketch of Morgan's potential abductor. The day following Morgan's disappearance, another witness from Fort Smith, a nearby town, reported seeing a man attempting to entice a 9-year-old girl into a public restroom. Fortunately, the girl escaped. Once again, the description of the man aligned with the composite sketch derived from accounts given by Morgan's friends. This series of events suggested that the individual responsible for Morgan's disappearance may have previously attempted to abduct other victims or may have successfully carried out similar crimes in the past. The police concentrated their efforts on locating the red pickup truck that matched the witness's description and began investigating the backgrounds of known offenders in surrounding towns. Over the subsequent weeks, investigators received hundreds of tips regarding potential suspects, but they were unable to establish any connections or confirm the involvement of these individuals in the crime. Meanwhile, investigators continued to search the area surrounding the stadium, collecting various items that could serve as evidence. They discovered several cigarette butts, bottles, and other objects, which were sent to the laboratory for DNA analysis. Ultimately, however, the police had no definitive evidence linking any of these items to Morgan's disappearance. Regarding the red pickup truck, the police received nearly 250 calls from witnesses across various locations. Numerous towns and even adjacent states reported sightings of similar vehicles. The challenge arose from the fact that many residents owned comparable models, amounting to thousands in total. Investigators attempted to verify each vehicle owner, yet they found no evidence connecting any of them to Morgan's disappearance. This investigation persisted for 2 weeks until the police received an unexpected call. A resident from a town named Stuttgart, located approximately 3 hours from Alma, observed a man attempting to break into his car while on his property. The homeowner frightened the intruder away, who then fled the scene. During his escape, the witness noticed that the man was holding a young girl by the hand. The police presented him with a composite sketch of the suspect, and he confirmed that the individual attempting to access his vehicle bore a striking resemblance to the suspect, while the girl appeared to be Morgan. In response, investigators promptly initiated a large-scale operation in Stuttgart, securing an area of around 10 square miles and deploying several dozen officers. Morgan's parents rushed to the town, hopeful that their daughter would finally be located. Hundreds of volunteers, alongside law enforcement, commenced a thorough search of the town and its surroundings. Helicopters conducted aerial scans, and search dogs were utilized to detect Morgan's scent using her belongings. Despite 16 hours of searching, no trace of the missing girl was discovered. Eventually, the police began to question the credibility of the witness's account. They administered 2 polygraph tests, both indicating that he was not truthful. Although the man maintained his innocence, he ultimately confessed to fabricating the entire story. A man reported witnessing an individual attempting to break into his vehicle. However, he was unable to clearly identify the person's face, and there was no young girl accompanying him. The man was subsequently arrested for providing false information, which resulted in nearly a full day of search efforts and incurred costs amounting to thousands of dollars. It remains uncertain whether he faced any penalties, but such actions generally lead to significant fines or imprisonment. Investigators found themselves back at the beginning of their inquiry, yet abandoning the case was not an option. They enlisted the assistance of 17 additional officers from various parts of the state, concentrating on the numerous leads that continued to emerge. By that time, they had received over 1,500 tips, none of which brought the detectives any closer to locating Morgan. Her parents remained resolute in their search, but as time passed, their optimism began to wane. Approximately 1 year after Morgan's disappearance, her mother established a non-profit organization aimed at locating missing children. While she remained dedicated to finding her daughter, there were no new clues to pursue. Consequently, she began to assist other families facing similar hardships and dedicated her efforts to raising awareness about the potential dangers that could threaten a child's safety at any moment. Over the ensuing years, law enforcement continued to investigate various leads and interrogate potential suspects, yet no significant advancements were made. In 2001, 6 years after Morgan's disappearance, the FBI released an age-progressed image depicting what she might look like at that time. That same year, several prominent television programs featured segments on her case, resulting in an uptick in the number of tips, although most of these ultimately proved to be unproductive. An intriguing lead particularly captured the investigators' interest when a caller asserted that the girl's remains were interred on a property located in Booneville, a small town approximately an hour's drive from Alma. The police regarded this information with seriousness, as the individual provided specific details regarding the case that had not been disclosed to the public. In early 2002, law enforcement secured a search warrant for the property, deploying search dogs to assist in the investigation. They excavated the entire area. However, no evidence of Morgan was uncovered. Subsequently, the case remained unsolved for nearly 10 years. In 2010, authorities received another lead concerning a potential site where Morgan's abductor might have held her, this time in a different state. A search was conducted, but once again, no evidence indicated that the girl had ever been present there. Notably, in 2017, police revisited the same residence for a separate investigation. It was discovered that a man who had previously resided there was incarcerated for offenses against minors, and authorities suspected his involvement in another similar case. Nevertheless, this search yielded no new information. In 2019, a documentary focusing on the case was released, and for the first time since Morgan's disappearance, police shared an image of a red pickup truck believed to be linked to the abductor. The vehicle had been briefly recorded by a camera during a game, but the poor quality and angle rendered it nearly impossible to discern any significant details. Following the documentary's airing, police appealed to the public for any information regarding the truck's owner. They received a number of new tips. However, despite these efforts, they were still unable to make any substantial progress. Investigators made significant progress in the case, which continued until 2021 when they identified their primary suspect, Billy Lynx. Lynx had come to the attention of law enforcement in the initial weeks following Morgan's disappearance. He had a criminal history involving offenses against minors and owned a red pickup truck similar to the one associated with the case. However, in 1995, authorities were unable to establish any link between him and Morgan's disappearance, despite searching his vehicle. During questioning, detectives believed Lynx was truthful about his innocence, and he was considerably older than 30, while witnesses described the abductor as younger. Nearly 3 decades later, detectives revisited Lynx as a suspect, hoping that advancements in DNA analysis could reveal any evidence of Morgan in his truck. Unfortunately, complications arose as Lynx had passed away in 2000, while incarcerated for an attempted abduction that occurred just 2 months after Morgan's disappearance. He had attempted to entice another girl into his vehicle outside a store, but her mother intervened and reported the incident, leading to his arrest. At the time, he was 70 years old and died of natural causes 5 years later while still in prison. Another challenge for investigators was the uncertainty surrounding the whereabouts of Lynx's pickup truck after nearly 30 years. However, they concentrated their efforts on tracing the vehicle's ownership history since Lynx's arrest, and to their astonishment, they eventually located the truck, which still existed. The current owner of the vehicle permitted the police to conduct an examination. Initially, the detectives were cautious in their optimism, as any potential DNA evidence might have been compromised or deteriorated over the years. However, forensic specialists unexpectedly discovered several hairs in the truck bed that appeared to correspond with Morgan's hair. These samples were subsequently sent to a Texas laboratory that utilized advanced DNA analysis technology for further examination. After an extensive wait of 8 months, a significant breakthrough occurred. They successfully extracted a DNA sample from the hair and compared it to the DNA of Morgan's mother. The results revealed a close genetic relationship, indicating that the hair likely belonged to one of her children or siblings. Morgan's mother asserted that she had never heard of Billy Lynx and had never encountered him in her lifetime. Detectives were also aware that no other members of Morgan's immediate family could have been present in that truck, leading to the conclusion that Morgan herself must have been inside it. On October 1, 2024, the police conducted a press conference to declare that Billy Lynx was officially deemed responsible for Morgan's abduction, with no doubts regarding his involvement. Regrettably, there is a widespread belief that Morgan could not possibly still be alive, nearly 29 years after her disappearance. Investigators suspect that Billy may have taken her life within the first few days following the abduction, but the location of her remains unknown, despite the ongoing investigation. The police have deemed the case essentially resolved. However, they will persist in their search for her remains. Without a confession from Billy, this endeavor appears nearly insurmountable for the detectives. They are also investigating Billy's potential involvement in other cases, given that he had attempted several kidnappings shortly after Morgan's disappearance. The police suspect that he may have a history of additional crimes. At the time of Morgan's abduction, he was already 70 years old, suggesting a lengthy background of such offenses. Furthermore, having served in the military during World War I, he may have acquired skills that could have facilitated his criminal activities. It is significant to note that Morgan's disappearance has become one of the most notorious crimes in Arkansas, prompting authorities to rename the Amber Alert system to Morgan Alert in her honor. Meanwhile, her mother continues to support other children and families through her nonprofit organization, which has served as a means of coping with her daughter's loss. Despite this, she still clings to a glimmer of hope that Morgan may still be alive. Please share your thoughts on this story in the comments section, and if you appreciated the video, kindly press the like button. Thank you for watching.